Have you noticed that something feels strangely different today, even if you cannot explain it with logic? Maybe the atmosphere between you and someone you love has become unusually delicate. Maybe ordinary conversations suddenly carry unexpected weight, or a simple sentence leaves an emotional mark that lingers much longer than it should. If that sounds familiar, do not dismiss it as coincidence, because what is unfolding today reaches far beyond a passing mood. After spending time examining every layer of today's astrology, I have become convinced that this is one of the defining relationship moments of the entire year. A moment capable of exposing truths that have quietly existed beneath the surface for weeks. The energy unfolding now is asking every connection to reveal what has been hidden, and the answers may arrive through the smallest interactions rather than dramatic events. At this exact moment, Venus and Mars are forming a perfect square, an exact 90-degree meeting between the planet associated with love and the planet connected to desire and action. At first glance, that may sound like another routine transit that appears on an astrology calendar. Yet this alignment carries a very different weight because it does not exist in isolation. Instead, it occupies the heart of a much larger celestial pattern that has been taking shape throughout this entire month. Once you recognize how every previous event has been leading toward today, many of the emotions that have puzzled you recently begin to make sense. If your relationship has been filled with subtle disagreements instead of explosive confrontations, if conversations have become strangely sharp, if harmless comments somehow seem to cut deeper than expected, there is a reason these experiences have become so common. Later, I will explain exactly why words seem to carry unusual power today, but before we reach that point, it is important to understand why this day represents far more than temporary tension. This is the natural culmination of an energetic process that began long before this morning arrived. Nothing about what you are experiencing developed overnight. Your emotions, your instincts, and even your physical body have been responding to every planetary movement since the opening days of July, whether you consciously noticed it or not. The first major shift appeared on July 4th, when Mars collided with Uranus in Gemini. That encounter felt like an invisible switch being flipped inside countless people. Suddenly, the desire for change became impossible to ignore. Anything that felt repetitive, restrictive, or emotionally confining began to create discomfort. Many people found themselves wanting to disrupt familiar relationship patterns without fully understanding why. If you felt an unexpected urge to challenge routines, question commitments, or pursue something that felt more alive during the beginning of the month, that impulse did not emerge randomly. It reflected the influence of that Mars and Uranus alignment. Then another important transition arrived on July 9th, when Venus entered Virgo and the emotional atmosphere transformed completely. The restless desire for rebellion gave way to careful observation. Instead of focusing on escape, attention shifted toward evaluation. Relationships were no longer measured by passion alone. They began to be examined through a practical and analytical perspective. Quiet questions started appearing beneath everyday interactions. Does this relationship truly function in daily life? Does this person consistently support me where it matters most? Can trust be demonstrated through ordinary actions instead of beautiful promises? That gradual movement from unpredictable excitement toward detailed examination created an emotional undercurrent that has remained active throughout the month. The next turning point arrived on July 23rd, when Mercury moved direct. Suddenly, conversations that had remained trapped inside your thoughts finally found a path into the open. Feelings that had been difficult to express began demanding language. Unspoken concerns started looking for a voice. Then, only a few days later, on July 26th, Saturn turned retrograde. That shift introduced another layer of honesty. It became increasingly difficult to avoid uncomfortable realities or continue pretending that unresolved issues would somehow disappear on their own. The message became unmistakable. Face what is truly working. Acknowledge what is no longer sustainable. Stop postponing the conversations that have been waiting to happen. Now the calendar reaches July 30th, and every emotional current that has quietly intensified since the beginning of the month converges into this single moment. Everything that has remained beneath the surface is pressing upward, asking to be acknowledged rather than suppressed. As uncomfortable as that may feel, this pressure serves a meaningful purpose because transformation rarely begins while everything remains comfortable. It begins when avoidance is no longer possible. This is also why today's Venus and Mars square deserves closer attention than many people realize. Venus currently occupies Virgo, while Mars travels through Gemini. Although these signs express themselves differently, they share an important connection because both answer to Mercury, the planet governing communication, thought, language, and perception. That detail changes everything. The conflict unfolding today is not primarily expressed through dramatic emotional scenes or prolonged silence. Instead, it reveals itself through conversations, through the choice of words, through tone, through timing, and through the subtle ways people interpret what is spoken. I have even recognized this pattern within my own experiences. The strongest tension does not necessarily feel emotional in the traditional sense. Instead, it resembles a mind attempting to follow two completely different maps at once. One inner voice longs for reliability, consistency, and someone whose presence improves everyday life through dependable actions. That is the expression of Venus in Virgo. At exactly the same time, another part of the psyche is pulled toward curiosity, intellectual stimulation, variety, freedom, and experiences that keep life mentally alive. That reflects the influence of Mars in Gemini. These two motivations are equally powerful, yet they move in opposite directions, creating an internal contradiction that naturally spills into conversations with the people closest to you. That explains why ordinary discussions suddenly feel charged with unusual intensity. It explains why a harmless sentence may sound like criticism, why you may discover yourself speaking more sharply than you intended, or why your words create emotional distance, even while your deeper longing is genuine closeness. Before judging yourself or assuming your relationship is falling apart, recognize what this transit is actually revealing. Its purpose is not to destroy connection. Its purpose is to illuminate the conflict that has quietly existed beneath the surface, bringing hidden contradictions into full awareness so they can finally be understood instead of unconsciously repeated. And once that deeper truth becomes visible, the next part of this journey begins. If you have been caught in an exhausting cycle where your mind keeps changing direction every time you think you have finally reached an answer, pause before you assume something is wrong with you. Perhaps one moment you are convinced that what you need most is loyalty, consistency, and someone willing to build a future beside you. Then, almost immediately, another part of you begins longing for independence, breathing room, and the freedom to rediscover yourself without expectations pressing down on your shoulders. That internal swing can feel frustrating, almost as though your heart and your intellect refuse to cooperate. Yet what is happening today suggests that this is not simple indecision. It reflects the exact influence of the Venus and Mars square. This alignment creates a genuine psychological conflict where two authentic desires exist simultaneously, each carrying equal emotional weight. Neither need is false, neither should be dismissed, and neither disappears simply because you choose to acknowledge the other. The deeper lesson of this transit is recognizing that growth begins only when you stop forcing yourself to pretend one part of your truth does not exist. The tension remains alive until every piece of your emotional reality is given permission to be seen. As powerful as that realization is, it becomes even more remarkable when you recognize that today's astrology extends far beyond a single square. While studying the larger patterns surrounding this day, another extraordinary layer becomes impossible to overlook. The interaction between Venus and Mars forms only the foundation of an exceptionally rare celestial structure known among astrologers as Thor's hammer. The name may sound dramatic, yet once you understand how this configuration concentrates energy, its symbolism becomes surprisingly appropriate. Imagine the exact 90-degree square between Venus and Mars serving as the stable base of the pattern. From each of those planets, another energetic connection rises through 135-degree aspects known as sesquiquadrates. Instead of moving outward in separate directions, both streams converge toward one central destination. That destination is today's full moon in Aquarius, positioned directly beside Pluto, the planet associated with profound transformation, endings, renewal, and irreversible psychological evolution. Suddenly, the emotional landscape changes completely. Every unresolved disagreement, every hidden contradiction, every conflict between what your heart longs for and how your actions pursue, it is no longer scattered across different parts of your life. Instead, all of that pressure is gathered together and directed toward a full moon whose very purpose is illumination. Not comfortable illumination, but uncompromising clarity. This lunar moment strips away excuses, removes comforting illusions, and exposes relationship dynamics exactly as they are. Anything concealed beneath habit, fear, or avoidance becomes increasingly difficult to ignore. Then another powerful influence joins the picture, adding even greater intensity. On this same day, the Sun forms an exact conjunction with Jupiter in Leo, creating what astrologers recognize as a cazimi. During a cazimi, a planet moves so close to the heart of the Sun that its qualities become exceptionally concentrated and amplified. Because Jupiter governs expansion, growth, belief, and magnification, every emotional response generated today feels larger than life. Your hopes seem bigger. Your disappointments echo more loudly. Your confidence may soar one moment only to collide with doubt the next. The desire for a relationship that feels inspiring, passionate, unforgettable, and deeply affirming grows almost impossible to ignore under this Leo influence. Yet, directly opposite that radiant vision stands the full moon in Aquarius, insisting that dreams alone are not enough. It demands objectivity, perspective, and emotional honesty, even when the truth challenges the story you wanted to believe. Meanwhile, the Venus and Mars square continues working beneath the surface, not through dramatic declarations, but through the ordinary choices that define real relationships every single day. It examines how consistently you communicate, how you respond during conflict, how you express affection, and whether your daily behavior truly reflects the love you claim to desire. That is why today's atmosphere can feel overwhelming. It is not because one isolated transit has appeared on the calendar. It is because multiple powerful forces are arriving together, each revealing a different layer of the same lesson, until avoiding self-awareness is no longer possible. This convergence transforms what could have been an ordinary, difficult day into a genuine turning point. At the heart of everything unfolding lies a simple observation that may feel surprisingly personal. There is often a meaningful distance between the future you describe and the path your actions continue choosing. Today, that distance becomes impossible to overlook. You may sincerely believe that your greatest wish is a dependable relationship built upon stability, trust, and emotional security. Those intentions may be completely genuine. Yet if you quietly observe where your attention naturally goes, whose messages immediately capture your interest, whose absence occupies your thoughts before you fall asleep, and who repeatedly receives your emotional investment, another story may emerge. Perhaps the people attracting you most strongly are unpredictable rather than dependable, intellectually exciting rather than emotionally available, fascinating rather than consistent. That contrast is one of the clearest expressions of the Venus and Mars square. This realization is not an invitation to criticize yourself or feel ashamed of your choices. Judgment serves no purpose here. Instead, this transit offers something far more valuable: the opportunity to witness your own patterns without denial. Only after seeing them honestly can you choose whether they still deserve your energy. Many people have repeated these emotional cycles for much longer than they realize, returning again and again to familiar attractions without questioning why the same outcomes continue appearing. Today's full moon shines with such unmistakable clarity that repeating the pattern unconsciously becomes much more difficult. It places one direct question before every heart willing to listen. Are you prepared to release the endless pursuit of what merely feels thrilling long enough to embrace what genuinely supports your well-being? Or have you become so attached to what feels predictable that you refuse to admit your soul is longing for greater inspiration and growth? Whichever answer belongs to you, it cannot be discovered through avoidance. It requires honesty, spoken not only inside your own mind, but acknowledged with complete sincerity. Although everyone experiences some influence from today's remarkable alignment, there are several signs standing directly beneath its brightest spotlight. For those with the Sun, Moon, Rising, or Venus in Virgo, Gemini, or Pisces, the emotional and psychological themes unfolding today reach exceptional intensity. The crossroads appearing now carries far greater significance than it may first seem. And once you recognize the deeper lesson hidden beneath recent events, many confusing experiences from this month begin fitting together with surprising clarity. If your chart is strongly connected to Virgo, the message unfolding next may reveal exactly why your inner world has felt so different. And understanding that deeper foundation becomes the beginning of everything that follows. If Virgo holds an important place in your birth chart through your Sun, Moon, Rising, or Venus, today's astrology may feel surprisingly personal. Under ordinary circumstances, Venus traveling through Virgo would feel familiar and supportive, because this is the environment where its energy naturally expresses itself through thoughtful care, practical devotion, and quiet acts of service. Yet, today's atmosphere is far from ordinary. Mars moving through Gemini forms an exact square to Venus, creating pressure that reaches directly into the very qualities you usually depend upon when building relationships. The habits that have always made you feel secure are now being questioned by the universe itself. You have likely spent far more time than you realize carrying responsibilities that were never entirely yours. You organize. You anticipate problems before they happen. You repair situations before anyone else notices they are falling apart, and you instinctively become the dependable person everyone leans on. While those qualities are admirable, they also carry a hidden emotional cost that may finally be impossible to ignore. Beneath your willingness to help may exist a quiet belief that your value depends upon your usefulness. Somewhere deep inside, there may be a fear that if you stop solving problems, stop rescuing people, or stop proving your reliability every single day, the love you receive might begin to disappear. That belief has likely influenced far more of your relationships than you have allowed yourself to recognize. Today's full moon in Aquarius invites you to step outside that familiar emotional pattern and observe it from a wider perspective. Instead of viewing yourself through anxiety, obligation, or endless lists of unfinished responsibilities, you are being asked to witness your life with remarkable objectivity. When that distance appears, an uncomfortable realization may surface. Perhaps your endless willingness to give has not always been pure generosity. Perhaps it has also functioned as protection. As long as you remain the caretaker, the planner, and the one holding everything together, you rarely have to expose your own unmet needs. Constantly giving allows you to avoid the frightening vulnerability of receiving. Yet beneath all of those carefully managed responsibilities lives a much simpler desire. You are no longer searching for another complicated situation that requires your attention. You are not looking for another person whose instability provides you with purpose. What your heart truly longs for is balance. You want someone who notices your effort without being reminded, someone who offers support with the same consistency you have always offered others, someone who recognizes your worth without requiring endless proof. More than anything, you want to believe that your value exists independently of your productivity, that you remain worthy of love even on the days when you feel tired, imperfect, or unable to carry everyone else's burdens. If those words awaken something inside you today, do not ignore that feeling. It is not random emotion. It is this remarkable alignment revealing the deeper reason your spirit has carried so much exhaustion. The true transformation is not found in deciding whether to leave a relationship or remain within it. The real turning point arrives when you finally understand why your heart has been carrying so much weight for so long. For those with strong Gemini placements, today's message arrives with a very different kind of urgency. Mars is currently moving through your sign, filling your thoughts with momentum, curiosity, confidence, and the unmistakable urge to move toward something new. Your mind is operating quickly, your ideas arrive one after another, and your desire to explore every possibility feels stronger than ever. Yet Venus in Virgo forms an exact square to that energy, creating resistance that may feel confusing because every attempt to move forward seems to encounter an invisible obstacle. Beneath that frustration lies a much deeper emotional lesson. You may have spent more time preserving possibilities than making lasting decisions. Perhaps this has happened consciously, or perhaps it has simply become your natural way of navigating life. Fully choosing one direction, one relationship, or one future can feel surprisingly restrictive because commitment sometimes appears to eliminate every road you did not take. The fear of losing possibilities may have quietly become stronger than the desire to fully experience the path already before you. Today's full moon in Aquarius challenges that assumption with extraordinary clarity. It asks whether endless options truly represent freedom, or whether they have become another form of limitation. When your attention remains divided among several different futures, genuine depth becomes difficult to create in any of them. Somewhere beneath the constant movement of your thoughts, you probably already understand that truth. Intellectual excitement, playful conversation, endless curiosity, and rapid exchanges of ideas can be deeply satisfying, yet they may also become subtle ways of protecting yourself from emotional intimacy. Remaining mentally engaged is much easier than allowing someone to see the vulnerable parts of your heart. Today's turning point invites you to discover something that may completely reshape your understanding of commitment. Choosing one relationship does not automatically erase intellectual freedom. Devotion does not require abandoning curiosity. Stability does not mean life becomes predictable or emotionally lifeless. Instead, genuine partnership asks for something far more challenging. It asks you to lower the shield of cleverness for a moment and allow another person to witness your authentic emotional world. That level of openness may feel unfamiliar, yet it also brings the closeness you have quietly desired. Deep inside, you are searching for someone capable of matching your mind, while also providing the consistency that helps your restless spirit feel safe. You long to be understood, without having every contradiction analyzed or criticized. You want someone who accepts that your complexity is not inconsistency, but part of who you genuinely are. Most importantly, you want commitment to feel like an expansion of your life instead of the end of your freedom. Today's astrology encourages you to admit that desire honestly, perhaps for the very first time. Then there is Pisces, and this message deserves to be approached with unusual compassion because the emotional landscape surrounding you carries its own unique intensity. Virgo stands directly across from Pisces in the Zodiac, placing you on the opposite side of this powerful axis, while the Venus and Mars square sends pressure through both directions at once. Rather than experiencing only one side of today's lesson, You may feel as though the emotional current is pulling you from multiple directions simultaneously, making what comes next especially significant. For those with strong Pisces placements, today's astrology may feel less like an external event and more like an emotional tide rising from somewhere deep within your soul. You naturally experience love through intuition before logic ever enters the picture. Your heart reaches for invisible connections, silent understanding, and the feeling that another person recognizes who you are without every emotion needing to be translated into language. That remarkable sensitivity is not a weakness. It is one of your greatest gifts because it allows you to experience compassion, devotion, and emotional closeness in ways many people spend a lifetime trying to understand. Yet the energy surrounding today places that beautiful instinct under extraordinary pressure. Venus, traveling through Virgo, demands precision instead of assumption. Mars, moving through Gemini, insists on conversation instead of silent expectation. Together, they create an atmosphere where feelings alone are no longer enough. For someone whose inner world is built upon instinct and emotional perception, being asked to explain your needs clearly, directly, and practically may feel almost unnatural. It can seem as though the universe is asking you to express yourself through a language that was never your first language. That is where today's deepest inner conflict begins. Somewhere within you may exist the belief that genuine love should require very little explanation. If another person truly cares, they should somehow recognize your emotions, notice your struggles, and understand what your heart is asking for, without every need being spoken aloud. The idea of putting those needs into words may even seem disappointing, almost as though explaining them somehow weakens the magic of the connection itself. Yet today's astrology gently invites you to reconsider that belief. It is entirely possible that this expectation, however beautiful it appears, has quietly prevented you from experiencing the very closeness you have always desired. Hoping another person can read your heart without communication is not necessarily intimacy. Sometimes it becomes a form of emotional protection. If you never clearly reveal what you need, you never have to face the terrifying possibility that someone hears your truth completely and still cannot meet you where you are. For a Pisces heart, few experiences feel more vulnerable than being fully understood, yet still not chosen. That fear can remain hidden beneath idealism for years, without ever being recognized. Beneath every layer of fantasy, however, your true longing is wonderfully simple. You are ready for complete devotion. You are searching for a relationship rooted in everyday reality without sacrificing emotional depth. You desire someone who treasures your sensitivity, while also creating a stable life beside you, someone capable of protecting the extraordinary connection you imagine through consistent actions, honest communication, and dependable presence. You are not looking for a dream that disappears the moment ordinary life begins. You want a partnership strong enough to move through quiet weekday mornings, practical responsibilities, misunderstandings, and difficult conversations while preserving its sense of wonder afterward. That is the real invitation unfolding today. The dream itself does not need to disappear. It simply needs enough space for another imperfect human being to enter it. The love you seek remains entirely possible, but it cannot survive on intuition alone. It also requires conversations, healthy boundaries, emotional courage, and the willingness to say clearly, "This is what I need," even when those words make you feel completely exposed. That honest expression is not destroying romance. It is creating the conditions where genuine intimacy can finally grow. As this remarkable day begins drawing its lessons together, there is one truth that deserves to remain with you above everything else. No one should pretend today's astrology feels comfortable because it does not. Conversations may become unusually sensitive. Emotional uncertainty may feel heavier than it has for weeks. The distance between the future you imagine and the choices you have actually been making may suddenly appear impossible to overlook. Yet none of those experiences automatically mean something has gone wrong. They may simply mean that something long ignored is finally receiving the attention it has always deserved. The square between Venus and Mars is not appearing in your life to create unnecessary suffering. Its deeper purpose is to strengthen what is genuine by exposing everything that has remained unresolved beneath the surface. Real growth rarely arrives while contradictions remain hidden. It begins when those contradictions become impossible to avoid. The discomfort you feel today may be the very force that frees you from repeating emotional patterns that have quietly shaped your relationships for years. At the same time, today's full moon in Aquarius shines an uncompromising light across your emotional landscape, allowing you to observe both yourself and your relationships with unusual clarity. Old assumptions lose their influence. Familiar emotional filters become easier to recognize. Alongside that clarity, the exact Sun and Jupiter conjunction in Leo, the powerful Cazimi unfolding today, reminds you that your desire for a love that feels meaningful, expansive, inspiring, and deeply fulfilling is not unrealistic. Wanting honesty does not cancel your longing for passion. Wanting emotional security does not require abandoning excitement. These truths exist together, rather than competing against one another. If you discover yourself standing in the middle of an uncomfortable conversation today, or if a realization suddenly arrives that changes the way you understand your own relationship patterns, resist the temptation to escape from it. Allow yourself to remain present with the discomfort instead of immediately searching for relief. Within that tension lives the possibility of genuine transformation. Beyond this difficult moment may exist a form of love that is more authentic, more emotionally stable, and more deeply fulfilling than anything you previously believed you deserved. Nothing about today's astrology suggests that the universe is working against you. Instead, it invites you to choose yourself with complete honesty, to define your needs clearly, to speak them confidently, and to stop apologizing for wanting relationships that honor who you truly are. Before we finish, I simply want to thank you for spending this time with me. Your willingness to stay until the end means more than you probably realize. If today's message connected with your experience and you would like to continue exploring astrology through this perspective, I would truly appreciate your support by subscribing and becoming part of this community. I would also love to hear your story. Share your zodiac sign in the comments and tell me what today's energy has been bringing into your life. Had you noticed the emotional tension we discussed? Has a surprising realization already appeared for you? I read every message because what continues to amaze me is how many people are moving through these same cosmic lessons together. Until we meet again, be patient with yourself. Honor what your heart is revealing today, and I look forward to sharing the next journey with you.